Fragments of Silicon. Today without a post show for the first time in a while.
Welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, are Golix and Pettyfan. So I suppose I should lead off by reminding everyone that today is the launch of MSP Season 14, happening after this program, which also means we're on a bit of a tighter time scheme than previously, because we got to do the mic checks and pre-show and all the technological stuff that we do before a program at 10:45 Eastern time. Not that that's been much of a problem recently, but it is something that we will have to keep a thought on in case an interview runs long or something like that, which has happened in the past. But putting that aside, let's get to the news. Alex, why don't you start us off today?
Well, we're expecting some pretty bad weather this Friday, so I'll already said that I'll be working from home then, so that'll be interesting, and hopefully there's not too much shoveling that I have to do or anything. I'm also just taking tomorrow off because I have a dentist appointment, and I was able to get an appointment for a haircut, so that's good. Video game wise, still mostly playing Super Robot Wars 30. I'm in Act 6 now, which is out of like 9, I think. But the first 3 were really short, so I'm probably more like... Well, no, I guess maybe 2/3 of the way through the game is accurate. I don't know.
The world may never know.
That's all I got.
Okay. Short and sweet. Petty, you're up.
Overall this week's been fairly uneventful. So, yay. We're looking into getting new phones beginning of next month. So, yay. The, Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, the one that has the pen, because I've grown to attach to my S Pen to leave it behind. And on Sunday, I actually won my first local Digimon tournament, so yay!
What'd you win?
A Karamon promo card.
Not a big tournament, just a
yeah, it's just like
regular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're not expecting much from here.
Yeah. And yeah, this Sunday is pre-release for the next adventure set, so that one has some pretty cool promos with it. So hopefully I can win one of the foil ones of those. And also new cards. But yeah, outside of that, still been kind of chewing through Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm just been kind of mainly doing a lot of side quests because I keep getting my ass kicked trying to get to the bird people's city thing, because there's that little kind of like gauntlet that you have to go through that's kind of a pain in the ass. So when in doubt, grind. And yeah, I think that's it for me.
All right, I guess it's my go. I guess the overall news hasn't changed much from, well, just the past couple of episodes. But yeah, still on my phone. Still don't have my laptop back from the shop. Latest I got is that they're still running the laptop through a battery of diagnostic tests, which is maybe a bit concerning. Like,
Or it's
but that was
shop code for we haven't had a chance to look at your laptop yet.
I'm like,
We've been using it as a sandwich platform.
yeah, that's more that's more my guessing, because the person I called on Monday was not the person I called on Friday. I'm like, I got the father on Monday, and he was much more annoyed that I was calling about my laptop. Like,
Isn't that fun?
like, no, it's not, quite frankly. Like, but it's like, the son kind of gave away the game on Friday because he told me that they had fallen somewhat behind on things. He didn't say how, but yeah, it's like, you ain't exactly been working on it, have you? But they tell me that they're working on it, and all that stuff. I'm like, I'll give another call in a couple of days. 'Cause, look, I don't care how fucking annoyed he gets. I'm going to get status updates on my laptop.
Indeed.
Because this shit has run more than a week now, and it's still.
Yeah, and you need your laptop for work.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's like I'm able to do a lot of stuff on the phone, but I'm not able to do everything, including the big one, actually play games that we get for the program to review. I haven't been able to do that since last Tuesday, which was why I was concerned about bringing the laptop in the first place, because the audio didn't work, everything else did. So I could have continued playing stuff. But, we are well past that. As far as how the Sunday reviews go, it's still up in the air. It's still up to when I get my laptop. I'll probably end up dropping another game from the list, given, it's already Wednesday. But, if this proceeds into next week, well, deal with that as it goes along, as we say. And yeah, I think that's about all my news. This is just going to degenerate into, very angry ranting if I continue along, because, yeah, I really hate typing letters and promos and shit on a fucking virtual keyboard. I have big hands. They're not very good for phones. Anyway, with that out of the way, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of our broadcast. And joining us this week is Tony Grayson of Summitsphere.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you doing tonight?
I'm pretty good. Things have been good. I'm glad to be here, surrounded by three of my new close friends. So,
and we are glad to welcome you to the program.
Thank you.
Especially since this is the first guest. You're the first guest we've had in a few weeks.
Oh wow, what an honor.
Well, it's more, yeah. It's kind of one of the perils of broadcasting, especially live broadcasting. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, to get into the interview proper, we start by asking this question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Interesting. So let me follow that up with a question to you. Would that be just in terms of what got you interested in development, or just kind of fascinated by games in general?
That is the personal and the professional.
Okay. I figured as much, but I just wanted to make 100% sure. So on a personal level, it's pretty interesting. I grew up in a family where video games were just kind of around, right? Like my parents were, my mom was a little bit younger. She was born in the 70s. So she grew up with like, Atari 2600, Pitfall. That was like Pitfall was around for me, and then, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, all that stuff. And, I consider myself like an old man, but I'm not that old, right? I'm 24. And, that kind of stuff was around for me. But the thing that I remember most was her giving me Crash Bandicoot, right? Like that stuck out to me. I think that's probably the first game I can remember. It was Crash Warped, I want to say it was. And I don't know, something about that just resonated with me. I think it was, obviously Crash is a really simple game to play, but I think just like the colors and the attitude and, the sort of cartoony stylization of that was something that really stuck with me. And I think that was really the first game that I kind of reacted on where I was like, oh, there's something artful about this, right? And now I realize I might be surrounded by a bunch of Crash haters, but that's always a possibility. I won't hold
Crash
that.
Is good.
I won't hold that against any of you if that's true. Don't worry.
Crash Banuka.
I mean,
but
not my favorite mascot platformer of the 90s on Sony platforms, no less. I preferred Spyro, but
I like Spyro a lot too. That was around also. But I appreciated Spyro more as I got older, I think, which is interesting because I think it tends to be the inverse for people. But yeah, like Crash, Spyro,
I mean,
those games were really...
Crash Bandicoot was about as good as the original PlayStation controller could do in terms of 3D platforming.
Yeah, for sure. And I think compared to some contemporaries like Mario 64 was obviously like a really big step forward, right? Compared to, like, I guess before that you had like Bug. But the thing with like Mario 64 being kind of like this really wide, expansive, sort of uncharted territory deal, just still an amazing game, and with the PC port and all that.
There were 3D platformers before Mario 64, like Jumping Flash comes to mind.
Oh, but yeah, for sure.
The whole genre got codified with Mario 64. I think it's
absolutely. That was like a meteor, man.
Yeah, with the controllable camera in a third-person view and relatively balanced movement in all directions.
Oh yeah, and the control was so fluid, man. And the fact yeah.
Yes, Hi, Adam, we're still here.
Oh boy. Technical difficulties.
I mean, I can see his icon glowing.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Live programming. The perils of right here.
Let me try and switch server and see if that fixes.
There he is.
All right.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Adam. The only problem was you, I think.
Anyway,
are we all clear?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like Mario 64 is just like a bloody meteor striking, right? Like the funny thing is, like with that game, it still holds up so damn well. But I played Mario 64 tons too. Like I grew up with both like a Nintendo 64 and a PlayStation, and then there's like a Game Boy Color, and there's like everything at that time when I was growing up. But Crash kind of resonated more with me in terms of, I guess, like an attitude perspective, right? And I think even like with Anton Ball, maybe like a little less than the current things that we're working on, but even in Anton Ball, you can kind of see like that influence creeping in if you look hard enough, and especially listen. The music definitely resonated with me as well, and I credit Crash and the music in that game as a big part of me getting into composing for games also. But on a professional level, I think what kind of stuck out for me is I don't really have a moment where I remember going, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to make games, right? Like that was just sort of a given for me. Like as a kid, as early as I can remember, I was always like drawing ideas. Like I remember being like 5 or 6 years old and drawing ideas out for like Mario fan games, And one of those Mario fan games was Anton Ball. I'm joking, by the way. That was not that wasn't serious. It didn't actually happen. But yeah, like that was just something that was always a given for me. Like I always wanted to make games, and I want to say I first started trying in earnest around like 2007 or 2008. I downloaded Game Maker 5, right? And I just kind of smashed my head against that until I got like, working code going, and I would download like the sprites off of like Spriter's Resource. And eventually when I was feeling a little more adventurous, I would go into like paint.net and start like drawing sprites myself. And I would upload some stuff. I think I tried uploading some stuff on like Mario Fan Games Galaxy, but I don't think any of that survived. I don't think any of that's still there. Definitely on the Yo-Yo Sandbox when that was still around. And that just kind of kept going for a while. And then I stopped for a bit because I got into actually the music business. And I went out, I would do some touring with local bands and go around Florida and, around the country. And that was like a really rewarding experience, but I just eventually stopped because the music industry is really, it's a rough business, right? It's really harsh, really cruel. And believe it or not, I'm actually kind of an introvert. So as good as I was at that, I just decided, gaming full time. That's it. And then, Summitsphere started. I won't get too deep into that in case you want to talk more about that. But
who was that? Well,
I think we lost Adam for a second there.
Yeah, sorry, my connection went red.
Oh,
jeez.
Yeah, that's one of the problems of doing this from a phone.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the connection drops.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, you were saying?
Oh, well, I guess I kind of wrapped that one up. I didn't want to ramble on too long. But yeah, I guess like to answer your question in a more succinct way, there really was never like a moment where I was like, oh, I want to make games. I think I literally just always wanted to do it since I was a wee bab. There was no turning point. It was just like, okay, yeah, that's it. That's me.
All right. So when you entered the industry, as we can define it,
yes.
What was the pathway from origin to current time? As in, how did you get to Summitsphere?
So that's an interesting question. And this kind of goes back actually to the Crash Bandicoot stuff, believe it or not. So I'm not really super like mega into that series now, but around like 2007, 2008, I was like, that was like number one for me, right? So part of where I cut my teeth on the game stuff was actually like an old Crash Bandicoot forum called the Crash Mania, which isn't around anymore, unfortunately. But through that, I ended up making, a number of online friends who actually, that was 2007. So what, we're like 15 years later now, right? I still talk to a lot of them. But through that, there were a lot of other game devs, other people using Game Maker 6 at the time. And we were all just kind of making crappy games together and cutting our teeth on that. And I ended up kind of, getting closer to some of them than others. And, we all kind of stuck with the game dev stuff, right? And the long and the short of it is, a good friend of mine from there, JB, who had moderated and then eventually usurped it. He got really heavy into that, and he started actually taking on some industry gigs. I'm not actually at liberty to say which because some of them are still NDA'd, even though they hadn't come out. But we've been talking for a while, and we had some stronger concepts. One of those was a third-party pitch, which unfortunately was turned down. But after we'd been working together for a while, we were kind of like, you know what? Like, why don't we try actually doing this professionally? So it was myself, JB, and then another friend who had come in a little later called Max, right? Max Freeman. Amazing artist, by the way. Go follow him on Twitter. I think it's Ozone's Lair. And we just got together and we started working on this game that at the time we called Demolition Donkey. And it was this sort of beat 'em up. I don't know if any of you guys ever played the Battletoads games, but it was kind of Battletoads Arcade. That was kind of like that was kind of like
I never played. I mean,
it's really good. I would argue it's probably the only truly good Battletoads. I love the series, but like they're tough pills to swallow. Arcade though, phenomenal. Extremely flawed, but such a fun experience. But yeah, I was just kind of like, shit, I want to make a game that was like that kicks as much ass as Battletoads. So yeah, I had always come up with characters and worlds and stuff like that. So I started coming up with something that sort of fit that bill just for fun. I didn't take it that seriously, especially because at this time I was still doing the music deal. And we just came up with an idea and came up with a prototype. Met a programmer at the time, found another animator to work with. So it was a team of about 5. And we worked on this for a while. We came up with a name that was not better necessarily, but at the time we thought it fit the game better, called Harm Yarders. And we made a pitch. We made a proper build of it. It wasn't super great, but this is like 2018, right? 2018, 2019, something like that. That was 2018 for sure, actually. I remember now. And I thought, this is a pretty cool little game. It's got 3 sexy farm animals beating the shit out of coyotes. There's blood, there's guts, it's fast, it's fun. Why don't we actually take this a step further and get it published, right? So at the time, I didn't quite know as much as I do now. And I was like, you know what? Let's go pitch to Devolver Digital. Right? And especially back in like 2018, Devolver as an indie dev, that was kind of like, whoa, if you want to get published by anyone, you want to get published by them. Because everything that they make just turns to gold, right? As he can see now, they have a $1 billion public valuation, all these years later. So they must be doing something right. I would probably argue that they're not necessarily indie now as a consequence of that.
No, but by definition, they're not indie anymore.
Yeah, literally
they're
not.
A public company. Like, let me tell you,
straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I still have like good friends over there, so no disparagement to them. But I'm gonna poke a little fun while I'm here. So I was like, I had read about like, okay, pitching to publishers, so on and so on. But I thought, well, kind of need to make an impact, right? If you go send an email, everyone can do that, right? Like, any of us here right now can go send an email to Devolver with our game. And, 100 other people have done that today. And, what's the chances you're going to get lost in the shuffle? Probably pretty high. Unfortunately, they can't go through everything.
Right.
So I thought, well, we're in June 2019. I've got a little bit of spare cash lying around. I think I'm just going to go to E3 and bother them over there. So I did that. I bought myself a plane ticket. I bought a pass for E3. And I bought the industry pass. I made a point of that because I think that was the first and last year because they haven't had E3 since, but they had like a public entry at the time. So you had like industry, which was, the first day and, every other day, but the first day was exclusive. And then the second and third days were open to the so-called gamer pass, which was like a quarter of the price. Almost feels like a little derogatory in a way. But so I went and bought that industry pass. I showed up to E3, no plans, no meetings, no nothing. And I went around and I started just talking to people, networking with people. And through that, I ended up making friends with people at Sega, and Rare was one of them. They were demonstrating the new Battletoads at that time, which was kind of a little bit of serendipity. Like, oh, almost like a little friendly competition in a way. Stupid me thinking that.
I mean, one of the things about E3. Far from the public displays, it's also a trade show. So it's
Absolutely.
always been a place where people of the gaming industry gather. Or at least used to, when that was a thing that people could do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think really that's only just now starting back up. Like, I think they have DICE going on and GDC next month, but for like 2 years, that just straight up has not happened. And so E3, like, everyone thinks of E3 as like this big thing with, you know, these fancy, lavish shows. And I always have to tell people, when I went to E3, that doesn't happen there. That happens like 2-3 days before at completely different places. It's just tied into it. And, you know, they always had the opportunity to just do it separately. It was just good press to do it there. So I went and I met with people, just kind of cold called and introduced myself. I didn't have any meetings or anything. I just kind of hung around booths and said, hey, you know, I'm Tony. And, you know, I've got this studio and this game, not pitching it, just kind of bullshitting. Because, like, what's a guy at Sega going to do for that, right? It's more just, you know, talking to people. But it was thanks to that I kind of got a little more into the industry than maybe other devs of my ilk at that time. Because, you know, you can cold call with emails and all that, but that never really goes anywhere. You're just kind of like anyone else that way. But if you annoy someone in person, then they kind of have to remember your face. So last day of E3, I was going to do it the day before and then the day before that, but I got cold feet, right? Because I was like, you know, it's Devolver. You know, maybe they won't like me. But last day of E3 comes and I realize, shit, I kind of have to do this, don't I? Otherwise, I'm going to I'll be out like the a few $100 I spent. So I went up to the Devolver's lot and I spoke to the lady running the front. I said, hey, can I speak to someone about pitching a game? And she said, oh, geez, you know, I'm so sorry, but, you know, typically we arrange those meetings like months in advance. You know, sorry. And I said, huh, okay. So I walked past her anyway, and I sought out Mike Wilson, who was and is the head of Devolver. And I had this laptop bag around my shoulder. And I said, hey, Mike, I'm Tony. You don't know me, but I've got a game here I really think you should sign. It's pretty fucking awesome. And I don't know where the balls came from on that. Literally just walking up to the head of this now $1 billion company and saying, hey, I want to talk to you.
What did you have to lose?
Yeah, straight up, right? And he looked at me and was like, oh, okay, here, show me what you got. And he brought me over to one of his guys who runs I think he doesn't anymore, but he ran the Greenlight team at the time. And before I know it, I'm sitting there just demonstrating Demolition Donkey in the blazing hot LA sun to Devolver. No meeting, no prep, no nothing. Just straight up like, here you are. Here's the game. Go on, play it. And that was like the very first actual pitch meeting I'd ever done in my life. So, of course, I whiffed it. I was terrible. I actually got feedback, not on the game, but I got feedback on how I pitched. And that really stuck with me. Like, to this day, it stuck with me. In a positive way, of course, you know. But the guy, I'm not going to name drop him, of course, out of respect, but he had said to me, listen, you got a cool game? Just let me play it. Let me figure it out. If you need to tell me how to play it, then you haven't done right. And that is the most valuable advice that you can give to any developer, any designer. And it really stuck with me because it meant after that point, I had to think in terms of, all right, what is intuitive, right? Because that makes sense. You know, if you pick up a controller and you don't know what to do, or you don't even have really an idea of how to maximize your fun, then you've kind of screwed up somewhere as a designer. And obviously, as far as pitching goes, you know, you should really not have to say a lick. Just watch them play. And Yeah, I kind of whiffed it. So to make this a little, wrap the story up a little bit. So we exchanged emails, and I gave him some materials, and we had a little back and forth for a while, but it wasn't to be, as you can tell. Harmyarder's Demolition Donkey never came out. But I'm still friendly with Devolver. I don't hold it against them at all. It was just kind of a matter of like, shit, we really wanted that game to succeed. So we kind of had like a sink or swim moment and pitched to a bunch of different publishers for a while. And that we never really got anywhere with that. Again, you can tell where's Harmyarders, it's nowhere. But during that time, for fun, there was this jam that I knew about that I kind of wanted to get involved with. I heard about it, and I had this dream for a bit of, I want to make something that's like an NES black box type game, just something really simple. And there was this jam still going on today called GB Jam, which is like a Game Boy jam. You make games that feel like the Game Boy and adhere to restrictions. 160 by 144 screen, 4 colors, whatever. And I remembered that during Harmyarder's development. So I had looked it up, thinking, maybe that's going to start soon. I should come up with an idea. I look it up, and I realize it's a 2-week jam, and already a week and a half has passed. So it's like 3 days left. And I'm like, oh, shit. Right?
Right.
Yeah. And but for some reason I was determined, right? I was like, okay, fuck. I'll just do it anyway. So I had these books. They were the Game Boy Works books. And they're basically like these compendiums of like the early years of the Game Boy. And I had looked into.
I have those.
Yeah, they're really good books, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a lot of great info in there. So I looked for inspiration because I had no idea in my head. The only thing I had was like a name, like a tentative name. It was like Brickball or some shit. And I looked through the books and I remembered Alleyway, right? Which was like this sort of breakout / Arkanoid clone that Nintendo had done in-house for the launch of the Game Boy. I remembered I actually had that game growing up, and I was like, maybe I could do something that feels like this. And I'd had this character for a while, who was just named like Red Guy, right? And I feel like if anyone listening knows Anton or at all, or what I'm here for, you could probably guess like, oh, that was Anton before Anton. And I thought, well, this guy would be pretty good for a Game Boy game, but being red doesn't really work for Game Boy, right? Black and white screen. So I kind of had to like whiff up a name. And I remembered like this crappy fan game I did when I was like maybe 15 or 16. It was deliberately like this horrible, fucked up Super Mario Brothers. It had the exact same sprites and everything, but the music was just a little bit off, and the controls were a little bit off, and everything you touched killed you except the enemies. Like just deliberately really terrible and avant-garde and strange. Called Super Anton Bros. I was like, okay, you know what? This character in this game is Anton. He's not Red Guy anymore. His name is Anton. Just, that's it. And somehow in those 3 days, I came up with the concept for Anton Ball. I designed all the levels in Anton Ball. I programmed the whole thing myself. I wrote the music myself, which was just kind of like a rip-off of Wrecking Crew's theme. And did all the graphics for Anton Ball myself. And that was it. I just threw it into the GB Jam in 3 days for a 2-week jam. And inexplicably, it actually won #1 in a category, which was just like overall Game Boy-ness. Like how much does it feel like an actual Game Boy game? It actually somehow won. And overall, I think it came like 3rd or something. I'd have to look that up. Mm-hmm. But that's how Anton Ball came about. And finally from there, whilst Harmyarders was still going on, I just kind of whipped up as like a joke, like an Anton Ball Deluxe, right? And that was sort of like my tribute to like the Mario Bros. Arcade ports that were included with like Mario Advance and Superstar Saga and all that. Like I played that more than the actual games. And it was just sort of like a piss take on that. I didn't expect anything out of it. But I just sort of started working on that with a friend who's still at the company today, Miggy. And we were doing it for fun. You know, we were going to release it for free, just as a sort of tribute to the people who liked Anton Ball and to get to work on that concept a little more. And then someone from Devolver, who I had talked to whilst I was there at E3 2019, hit me up and was like, hey, I left Devolver. I started my own publisher, and I want to fund your game. I thought, okay, yeah, let's fund Harmyarders. I said, no, I want to fund Anton Ball. And I'm thinking, well, this isn't really a real game, but okay. And from that point, we just kind of had to like whip up like a game design document, bring in the rest of the team that was working on Harmyarders, and say, hey, we're not working on that anymore. Forget about it. We're working on Anton Ball now. We got money for this thing. And yeah, from there, we I guess that was when we became a pro studio officially. So we actually started getting paid for our work. And it's been a long, difficult, tumultuous ride since then. And I hate everyone that works here. I wish I stopped.
I'm like, look, that is so many very game dev stories that we've heard on this program. But anyway, so how long did it take to, I guess for lack of a better term, deluxify Anton Ball?
So that's an interesting question because I think Anton Ball Deluxe development started, I want to say like November or December 2019, right? Because it's still up to that point, like Harmyarders was kind of like the, that was the focus. And I remember I wanted to do like a deluxe version of Anton Ball itself. And then we came up with Punch Ball Anton Ball. And then Versus Anton Ball, which were, respectively iterations on the Anton Ball formula. And then we wanted to do like an Anton Land, right? Which was sort of my tribute to Donkey Kong on the Game Boy, DK94. But we had to cut that out once the publisher got involved, just by virtue of the fact that like, we actually want to ship this thing. So just time constraints, because if we put that in, it would have been 2 years. So
yeah, Donkey Kong 94 has like 100 levels.
Oh yeah, and it's a phenomenal game. So it would have been a very tall order to measure up to that. So I want to say that I worked on that on and off, not really like super in earnest. It was just a side project. But June 2020 was when we got approached by Proponent Games, the Devolver offshoot. They're not an offshoot because they're not like related in that way, but they have like ex-Devolver talent. And we finalized our agreement in July. And so from there, we had to just like quickly whip up a game design document and go, okay, here's the minimum viable product. So from there, we worked on it basically every day for about 8 months. We had our Gold Master in February. So July to February was kind of the overall dev cycle of Anton Ball Deluxe. Because before that, there really wasn't a whole lot, It was just kind of funny side project.
It was a game jam game.
Yeah, it started as a game jam game, and it got surprisingly popular as a game jam game for what it was. Like more popular than I was used to something being, And then it just kind of made sense because again, like I liked that character, and yeah, so somehow we ended up with a shippable game after 8 months, which, I mean, it's not a massive game at all, but there is like a fair bit of extraneous content. So,
right.
And it was a tight cycle. It was a very tight cycle. I would have liked a year to kind of polish out all the kinks because I know there's been a lot of feedback since then, but we'll save it for Anton Ball Super Deluxe or, whatever ends up happening.
Fair enough. And
Anton Ball Advance, let's go.
Oh, yes.
I mean, no, it'd be Anton Ball Deluxe Color.
I mean, we're already in color, so we're kind of like regressing a little bit here. We're like,
I know, but that's just kind of how the Game Boy scheme went.
I think we could probably move to Anton Ball DS.
Oh God!
Right? We're just gonna move to touch controls. You know, I think I think that's probably the next step for the Anton Ball series. I'm joking for anyone listening here because I feel like people are gonna latch onto that one.
Yeah. People can take things that are serious that are spoken in jest. Wouldn't be the first time that would happen with this program. So, anyway, so what was the response to Anton Ball when it got released?
So it was really funny because a lot of what we got. So I'll say this: as a baseline standard, literally any kind of response would have been more than I expected. Right? Like I just expected this to go out there and do. Maybe a couple people will play it and enjoy it, and that was that. But it spread kind of surprisingly far, way more than anything else that I've ever created, or I guess any of us has ever made. And there's been so much fan art, and like it was kind of overnight. It wasn't really gradual. Like we had like that initial demo back in September of 2020, where the game kind of really got shown, and the response was a little mixed. Like there were people who loved it, and then there were people who thought it was derivative, or people who thought it was too hard or too simple, and that's fine. It's not for everyone. But when the game came out officially on Steam, it was, for me anyway, really, really crazy. There were lots of people making fan art. The reviews were pretty good at the time. It was immense. It was immense, and it continues to grow somehow. Like I'll go and post something on Twitter, and I post garbage on Twitter. Okay, like I do not take myself seriously at all. And then I'll go in the replies somewhere and tag like a friend, and I don't know, like some Greenhorn Forest YouTube poop or some shit. And then some random will come reply like, "Oh, hi Anton Ball guy. Like, hey, sure, okay, that's great. I'm really glad you recognize me, but I guess I didn't really expect that ever. It's kind of strange to be in that micro celebrity D-lister status. To put it in a word, just unexpected. That has been the response.
Oh, I mean, at least it's for good reasons.
Hey, absolutely. I mean, there's such a thing as bad press, contrary to what people might tell you.
Yes, yes, there is.
So I'm really pleased that people like what we've made, and it's kind of cool to be sort of associated with sort of like the Wario type of deal, because obviously like Anton as a character and that specific iteration of Anton is very like Wario inspired. Like that's on purpose. People like to pretend it's not. Like, oh, you guys can't come up with anything, but no, it's very deliberate. We literally call him Red Wario internally. There's really never been any doubt about that. So I appreciate that a lot of people take that well and kind of associate us with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about the Switch version? Was there any difficulty bringing this game to that platform?
There was a lot, actually. Yeah, the hardest part actually was, believe it or not, getting a kit. Getting approved for the platform, because they don't actually really approve you based on whether or not they like your game or anything like that. The process is pretty mysterious. So we had to get some external help through that. And that was thanks to actually the creator of Downwell, believe it or not, just vouching for us like, oh, these guys are cool. So once we got that, developing and porting the game for Switch was mostly pretty smooth. But during development, we ran into a really horrible fatal error on the Switch version only, which caused the game to crash in punchball mode. And you can't launch a game on both platforms without one mode. That doesn't make sense. So we were really gutted about that, and we were intending for both ports to release at the same time, but we had to just postpone the Switch version because we couldn't figure out what was going on. And I had written to, our engine is still Game Maker after all these years. And I'd written to Yo-Yo about it. And I said, hey, we can't figure this out. Do you think it's something wrong with Game Maker? And they said, yeah, it kind of is. Just wait 3 or 4 months till we fix it, though. That was verbatim the response. Because I sent them the project file and everything. And they're like, yeah, it's not your fault. It's ours. You just got to wait. Like, bro, what? So that was really the biggest problem that we faced with that port, because it meant, shit, we can't get this out at the same time. And that meant like a lot of the wind in our sails was taken out, because like we wanted to be on Nintendo. That was just like a thing, that kind of legitimizes you as a developer in a funny way. It doesn't really, like, you're not any less of a developer if you're on Steam. But for us, it was kind of like, okay, we're like, we've got big cojones now because we've done that. So we just sat on that port until Yo-Yo fixed the issue. And then the third, I suppose. The third big difficulty was just bringing online to Switch. We basically would have had to rewrite the entire online component. You can't just port it verbatim because the Steam version is based so heavily on Steam's own networking system. But unfortunately, just for internal reasons, nothing to do with us, but our publisher just didn't want to grant us any funding to do the Switch online. They just didn't feel that it was, I guess, worth doing for that port, which makes me a little bit sad. I really hope we can go back and do it someday, because that game is perfect for Switch, right? It's more of a pick up and play game than, I think, a PC game. But yeah, as a consequence, we were just like, okay, we've got our DLC out, so we're just going to include that for free. So you either get DLC for free or you get online. You pick your poison. As far as the rest of it goes, though, Nintendo themselves were great. They actually loved Anton Ball. They told me so themselves, and we have a great working relationship with Nintendo overall. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to bringing our next game to the platform. And I can confirm that it's running perfectly on Switch as of today. So keep an eye out for that.
Right. So we are running low on time. So I'll end things by asking a clarifying question.
Sure.
And that is on this game too. It's not your Barnyard Animal game, is it?
It is not. It is not, no. That I will deconfirm today. We're not doing Harm Yarders. I mean, we will. We will do it eventually, but that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years out. It is not that game, no.
Okay, duly noted.
Yes.
And I'll see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think you've asked pretty much everything I was thinking of.
Okay. Well, Tony, it was great having you on the program. And
it was great being on.
It's good that you had a good time on this show. And maybe we'll have you back on when Game 2 is ready to be talked about.
Well, I can tell you right now it's going to be very soon. So keep your eyes out. And if you want to have me on, you got my DMs, man.
Right. All right. So the game is Anton Ball Deluxe. It's on Steam and Nintendo Switch. The price is $14.99. Be sure to pick it up today. And Petty, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion. As promised, this is the Bungie getting bought by PlayStation topic. I know it's been a few weeks since that has occurred or is occurring. I'm actually not remembering if they've closed the deal or if it's just
It's been a few weeks since that was announced.
Yeah. But it's important to note these kinds of things because, like, the Activision Blizzard deal isn't actually going to be a thing for, many months, maybe a year, and some other acquisitions we've talked about. But yeah, the important point is Bungie is going to be owned by Sony's PlayStation division. But they, one of the first things that jumps out from the announcement, even today, is, and I suspect this was the specific sticking point, because I completely buy the idea that Microsoft was trying to buy Bungie, but I can guarantee you this what killed it. They wanted complete autonomy. And
also, I'm pretty sure they were having war flashbacks to the Halo era.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's why Bungie wanted independence. Because those experiences on specifically Halo 2, like if you go look up the actual development of Halo 2, it was a fucking rough process. Like,
autonomy and independence here meaning that they get to develop the games that they want to be developing instead of being told, okay, you're making our next whatever, or
no, it's further than that. They get to pick the platforms. They are an autonomous subsidiary of PlayStation, as opposed to a division that makes games for the first party machine.
Right, they're not part of PlayStation Studios. They're actually just PlayStation.
It's kind of
a pretty important distinction.
Yeah, it's what Mojang has with Microsoft and
now Activision also.
Yeah, but that hasn't gone through yet.
True.
But the overall point is Bungie is going to be able to do the things that it wants to do without interference from Sony. And this is what they've been wanting. Because, they don't want to go back to the Halo days. Because, if you think crunch is a new thing in the industry, no, it's always been there. Look, going all the way back to the creation of E.T., that was famously made in 5 weeks. And developing an Atari 2600 game usually took 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if crunch could ever be completely eliminated from the industry. Probably not. But
honestly, that kind of crunch probably has a self-amplifying relationship with the public perception of nerds as having unhealthy sleep schedules.
Well, also a lot of times the people do it to themselves. It's like, Howard Scott Warshaw said, "I can do it in 5 weeks." Developing ET, he did it, but he had to code, even in his head, 24/7. Anyway, so the question that's really been beckoning towards this move is, okay, why is PlayStation buying Bungie? For, I believe it was $3.5 billion? Something that seems positively bite-sized in this day and age. When just let's be honest, a few months ago, this would have been really big in terms of its dollar value. That's what happens when you do a $69 billion deal. But that's no fault. That's no fault on PlayStation or Bungie. Anyway, the answer lies in what Bungie's doing these days, and that's Destiny. More specifically, the genre. Sony wants to get into live service games in a very big way. And it's understandable from a few perspectives. First of all, if you look at Sony's first-party catalog, what do you see? A lot of stuff, maybe not as much as they used to. That's just kind of how AAA development has gone over the generations. But, when you think of a PlayStation game, you think of what? Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, etc., etc. A third-person action adventure game on a grand scale, but very single player focused.
Relatively, yeah.
No, what they don't have is, a Fortnite, a, Halo Infinite even. Like Microsoft has several live service games. The State of Decay games, Sea of Thieves, and so on and so forth. And here's the thing about live service games, why they've been the talk of the industry. They make a lot of money if you get them right. Let's be clear here. Like, Sony has announced that they are building 10 live service games, which does seem a bit excessive. But I suppose it's kind of like, okay, if this one doesn't work, we got others in the tank. And who do you think's going to help build them? Right, it's Bungie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was reaching for my mute button.
Yeah.
I kind of took it rhetorically.
Yeah. Well, it's because Bungie has live service experience, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
It also helps that Destiny is, okay, it's not, say, Fortnite levels of successful. Like, I honestly don't know how...
Really, what is, somehow?
It's like right up there, though, It's definitely like everyone plays Destiny.
Yeah.
I don't, but everyone else does.
Well, Destiny is one of those games that if a new expansion's coming out, 10 to 1 someone in your work might be taking a couple days off for it.
Absolutely.
Yep. It's still, like, people kind of get in their heads that, once the next big thing comes along, the old things kind of disappear. That's not necessarily true. Like, once again, like Sea of Thieves has been running for 5-6 years, and it's like, it's like the most profitable game Rare has ever made. Because guess what?
It's a service game.
Yeah, well, that recumbent user spending adds up very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the gist of why Sony wanted Bungie. But I'm sure the question is, why would Bungie sell out? And I can answer that question. It's why Platinum Games is currently actively looking for a buyer.
Security.
Yes.
Security, yeah.
Because the road of an indie developer, especially when you get to a certain size, is really rough in ways that are rather imperceptible to the general populace. And big one, financing.
Yep.
If you're an indie dev, you're always gonna have to beg someone for money. Whether it be investment, Kickstarter,
This way, you still have to beg people for money, but at least it's only people inside one company.
Yeah,
and you're more likely to get it ultimately.
Yeah, you're begging to be allocated money from the existing budget, not for people to just give money to you from elsewhere.
Exactly, it's not a cold call.
Yep. And it's also, this is all happening in the context of, what's been dubbed the acquisition or consolidation wars. Because, buying studios of the gaming variety is really popular for a few reasons.
There's an announcement every few weeks now.
I'm like, yes. I'm like, because, between Sony, Microsoft, 2K, EA, Embracer, Tencent, we get announcement after announcement. And this is just the stuff at the top, because it's happening all the way down to small teams are getting acquired for one reason or another. Obviously, like, you don't hear about Tiny Build's latest purchases, for example, as compared to Sony, but it's still happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's because
Devolver recently acquired Crow Team. as an example.
Devolver acquired a whole bunch of studios.
Yeah, I think they got Doinksoft. They got a bunch of their guys. Yeah, makes enough sense.
Sorry,
I
that's
mean,
a funny name.
hey, right? Isn't it?
They got Firefly Studios. Another example there. But
it makes enough sense because no one knows who developed a Devolver game. They just know it's a Devolver game.
Yeah, well, Firefly Studios makes sense because there's a long history here that I don't have any amount of time to get into. But anyway, yeah. So a lot of acquisitions happening. It's not just because it's the style at the time. It's because inflation is a big issue, and to oversimplify a lot of finance, it's the money that what they call liquidity won't be worth as much down the line. And these companies figure it's better to put this money into something rather than to have them lose their value. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. As far as, will Sony ruin Bungie? Probably not, because, once again, Bungie has basically complete autonomy. So if something goes wrong, it's probably gonna be on Bungie's end. But I know how these things work. It's like, as soon as, I don't know, the next DLC of Destiny 2 pisses off someone, which is 100% guaranteed.
Yeah. I think he probably set a fucking clock by it.
Yeah. I'm like, people are probably going to blame Sony for ruining the game or whatever. This is some clockwork shit as well, okay? It's like, if you want the most recent example for this, that's not related to Destiny, go look up at the reaction to Wordle.
Yep.
Because people have been complaining about how Wordle has been ruined or been made more complicated by the New York Times. And an actual investigation looked into it, and it turns out, no. It turns out the game actually got a bit simpler. They got rid of some of the more esoteric words. Yeah, so it's basically another age-old gaming tradition. Blaming others because you suck. I'm like, that's what this is. Anyway.
I want to posit something. Do you reckon they're going to have Bungie do maybe a SOCOM game or something? People have wanted that for a while.
I don't know.
It feels obvious now that I think about it.
Yeah, SOCOM, specifically not SOCOM, but Massive Action Game. Anyone else remember this thing?
No.
Not off the top of my head.
It's the not SOCOM game that Zipper Interactive made for the PlayStation 3. It was yeah, it was supposed to be over 100 people or something like that. Yeah, I never played it, but I think that was their attempt to bring and there was also SOCOM 4, which also didn't work out. But we are talking about the PlayStation 3 era. The live service genre, if you will, was not nearly as robust as it is even 5 years ago, when Destiny first hit the shelves.
Mm.
Or was it 6? Oh.
Something like that. Destiny's been around for a while, man.
Yeah. I know it's all Destiny 2 now, but Destiny is still considered to be one of the pioneers of games as a service or live service games.
Back in my day, they rode around rocks and shit.
Yeah, I'm basically, yeah, I think Bungie's going to be okay, under Sony. They got the terms that were favorable to them, and they are producing once again, a very respected and beloved. Unless you're in the actual player base, then it's nonstop complaining. I will note that. Franchise. And it is also noted that Bungie is working on a new franchise, a new thing that has never been done before. So they're not doing Destiny 3 or reviving Marathon. Like, no, that was not going to ever fucking happen. Not on this scale. Like, anyway, so any other questions, comments, or concerns on this topic?
Not that I can think of.
All right.
Yeah,
So-
I think I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so we got to get to the wrapping. Right. So that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. The week ahead, bit uncertain. We are still slated to have Joey Zolakowski of Schnell Games on Friday, but they have not confirmed with us, so this may end up getting canceled. Bringing that up now, as far as the Sunday reviews, that is still very much up in the air, at least my stuff. Petty will be reviewing Hacker Simulator, and the Golics will be tackling Match 3 Pirates 2. Like, my game, I might end up reviewing Wadoku.
Make your mind
Not
up.
even-
Is it 3 pirates or 2?
Match 3 Pirates 2.
I know, I'm kidding.
Okay,
I have the game, don't worry.
yeah, right. Anyway, and also, reminder, in about 20 minutes or so, let's be honest here, we're probably not launching at 11 o'clock, especially since this is the first Mac-led broadcast in months, and so on and so forth. But we are planning to relaunch MSP tonight. So we'll see you over there, and we'll see you later on in the week. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.